What's going on, man? It's back with another video. I don't know what I just said, but I'm back with another one. Before we do say anything else, all praise to the Most High. As you can tell, I ain't done this in a few days, bro. I'm rusty or something. I don't know what's going on. But today we have 10 strict rules of the Mafia and what happens if you break them. Personally, I would love to be a part of. I would love to be a part of the Mafia. If anybody taking applications, or the cartel, if anybody taking applications, as long as it pays good, let me know. Get in the comments or something. Let's get right into it.
Very interesting. Back in 2007 in Palermo, Italy, the Italian authorities happened to stumble upon the house of a mafia guy. His name was Salvatore Piccolo, and he had been on the run for quite some time. And they finally caught up with him, and he had like a villa somewhere in Palermo, Italy. And they went through the villa, and they discovered something that was very, very interesting. And it was actually written in Italian, I believe, on paper, something that we've never heard of before. And they titled it, or he titled it, The 10 Commandments of the Mafia. And it was actually 10 commandments that you're supposed to uphold if you're part of that life. And in 2008, the Discovery Channel actually made a documentary out of it, and I was one of the principal interviewees in that documentary. So if you want to catch it, again, it's 10 Commandments of the Mafia. I believe it's all over YouTube. You can probably get it on DVD or whatever. But very, very interesting. And, you know, some people have said that those 10 Commandments were initially made to coexist with the 10 Commandments of our Lord God. I don't know that to be true. I don't believe so. I never heard of that. It was just only speculation and rumor, but they certainly don't correspond or correlate to one another. But I want to go over that because it's very interesting, and I think it'll give you a better understanding of what the Mafia was originally built upon. And I think before I get into that, I have to go back to the Code of Omerta. I'm sure you people have heard that before. It is allegedly the Code of Silence, where everybody that is a made member of the Mafia or Cosa Nostra here in this country is not supposed to talk about it. So it's a code of silence. Well, actually, it's more than that. It's actually a code of solidarity, a code of loyalty. And really the basis of Omerta is not so much in talking about the life, but it's really talking about law enforcement. And in Omerta, they consider it demeaning, they consider it shameful to talk to law enforcement for any reason. Even if one of your enemies was to hurt you, you're not supposed to go against them and speak to the law. It would be shameful if you did.
I'm not even in the Mafia, and I agree. It's shameful. You tripping.
That because if you have an enemy and he tries to hurt you, you're supposed to take revenge. That's the Mafia way. And that was really what the code was all about. As a matter of fact, it was so extreme that if you got in trouble yourself, if you were indicted for something and you were innocent, you weren't even supposed to defend yourself when it came to law enforcement. You're supposed to keep your mouth shut. That's how extreme it was. So it wasn't so much about, you know, mentioning that there is a Mafia, but it was about breaking that code and speaking to law enforcement at any point in time. It was considered shameful and demeaning. And, you know, to give you an example of that, when Frank Costello was shot, there was an attempted assassination, you probably know this, and Chin Gigante, the boss of the Genovese family, one-time boss, has passed away. He was a shooter. Well, when law enforcement went to Costello, he refused to identify Gigante as the shooter, and he was shot on the orders of Vito Genovese. He refused to even identify him. So in reality, Costello really kept that oath of Omerta. And, you know, in the United States, you know, I think that that code was broken a long time ago. Some of the guys they got very, you know, out in the open, I would say. I think it started with Joe Colombo. He was kind of flashy, started the Italian-American Civil Rights League. People in the life didn't like that, especially the old-timers, Carlo Gambino. They were against it. You know, John Gotti, I guess, another example, he was out there, whether it by choice or just the media was different, and they just made him a superstar, and he kind of, you know, some people say he reveled in it, but that was his life, you know. That was really frowned upon in the old-time Mafia days. And, you know, the Mafia here in the United States was first really broken open, or law enforcement was made aware of it or identified it when Joe Valachi first became an informant back in the early 1960s. I think in 1963 or 64, he testified in front of the McClellan Committee, and he told about the mafia and their secrets and so on and so forth. In Italy, a fellow by the name of Tommaso Buscetta, I think in 1984, he was the guy that really revealed what was going on in the mafia in Italy. So that code has been broken. And here in the United States, of course, there's been more information given on wiretaps and bugging devices and so on and so forth that I don't think it's really a secret anymore as far as what the mafia is all about, what Cosa Nostra in this country is all about. So, but that's kind of the history of it. That's what omerta really means. And, you know, I wanted to give you a little background, but I'm actually going to read the 10 Commandments as they were written by this fella Piccolo. And we can discuss each one of them a little bit. All right, everyone, quick thing before we continue. You know what everyone tells me at events? They come up and they say, Michael, I bought your wine just to support you. And then they say, but I kept buying it because it's so darn good. And that's the best compliment I ever get. So enjoy it. Here it is. Let's get back to it. Number one, no one can present himself directly to another of our friends. There must be a third person to do it. Well, that's the mafia way. That's also Cosa Nostra here in this country. What that means is, if I'm a made guy, let's say with the Colombo family like I was, and John Gotti is a made guy with the Gambino family, but we have never met as main guys. I can't go up to John and say, hey, John, you know, I'm made with the Colombos. Let me introduce myself. I'm not allowed to do that. And he wouldn't acknowledge me, and rightfully so. A third made guy who knows the both of us, who's been formally introduced to us, has to introduce us as made guys. So he would be in the middle and he'd say, Michael, Amiga Nostra, John Gotti. And that's how we would meet. So that is a principal role, and that's for security reasons more than anything else. You just can't identify yourself. So that's commandment number one. Number two, never look at the wives of friends. Well, you know what that means. You don't mess around with somebody's wife, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's mother. I think everybody knows that that's a strict commandment. I told you about a friend of mine, I think in a previous video, where I dropped him off at his house, and because he and his brother had killed his father, who was another made guy, they were all made guys, they was haunted by the ghost of his dad. He would never go into his house if nobody was in there alone. So that was a hard, fast rule. And for the most part, you know, during my experience in that life, that was kept.
He and his brother killed his pops. What did he do? I ain't even about to sit here and be like, oh, that's crazy, because I'm crazy. But what did he do? It's for you and, bro. Hey, bro, you trying to slide on that or what? Bro, what? But nah, this commandment right here, yeah, a lot of people don't understand this, yeah. I wish this was more understood upon this, in this community. Dirty motherfucker.
You didn't mess with
Let it be a baby mama or something like
daughter,
that.
Sister, mother. That was hands off, and I think that's a good commandment. I mean, I'm not, you know, suggesting that some people
wives ain't safe, sisters ain't safe,
the mom
nothing.
way. Third commandment: never be seen with cops. Now, you know, back in the day, you weren't even allowed to be in the presence of police. You weren't allowed to be associated in any way. You weren't allowed to talk to them, be seen with them,
I uphold that myself.
Them. That was in the mafia. Was it strictly kept? I imagine so. I don't really know. I wasn't a member of the mafia. I was here Cosa Nostra in America. And honestly, in my experience here, that wasn't, you know, totally the way. Some of us had relatives that were police. And, you know, sometimes we might, you know, be in their company. Doesn't mean we were talking to them. Doesn't mean we were divulging information. I don't think it was as seriously taken here in the United States. However, if somebody was hanging out around police, obviously that would raise suspicion. People would not like that. You'd have to answer for it and certainly let people know what it was all about. So, but it's pretty much, you know, pretty much the same here. The fourth commandment, don't go to pubs and clubs. Mafia, they didn't want you to go to nightclubs. They didn't want you to be seen out and about around. Obviously, that was not kept here in the United States. I mean, the nightlife, You know, when I was back in that life, I was out 6 nights a week in various clubs. I actually had interests in clubs, and so did many, many of the guys. We like to hang out that way. My father, you know, I told you of us going to the Copacabana and the Orchid Room and places like that. So that might have been a commandment of the Mafia. It certainly wasn't a commandment of Cosa Nostra. And you should see the differences as I talk about this, because I do believe that this is what the Mafia was all about in Italy. And you see the differences between the Mafia in Italy and Cosa Nostra here in the United States. Two distinct and separate organizations, pretty much the same principles, but different in many ways. Mm-hmm. So that was the fourth. The fifth commandment, always being available for Cosa Nostra, is a duty, even if your wife is about to give birth. What they're saying here is that Mafia, Cosa Nostra, comes before anything and everything in your life. The night that I got made, Tom DeBella, who was the acting boss for Persico, he told me straight out, Michael, this comes before anything in your life. I was told this actually when I was proposed, and he told me what was going to be required of me as a recruit, and then that was repeated, obviously, the night that I got made. If your mother is sick and dying, you're at her bedside, you leave your mother's side, you come and serve us. From now on, number one in your life before anything and everything. That's what the Mafia, Cosa Nostra, is allegedly all about. Was it really kept here in the United States? I don't know. You know, I mean,
I wouldn't have kept it.
Look, I ultimately walked away from that life. I put my family first, so I violated my oath in that regard. But for me, it was the right decision. But you know, I don't know. I think that, you know, you come in, you have an idealistic view of the life. You want to keep all the rules and regulations, but that is pretty extreme.
Rules are made to be broken.
Okay, that's number 5. Number 6, appointments must absolutely be respected. This was without a doubt. In that life, number 1, you can never be late. If you're late, that's a sign of disrespect. I remember one time I was traveling from Long Island into New York. I had to be on Carroll Street, Monty's restaurant, where Colombo, you know, headquarters used to be for most of the higher up. And I was late. I wasn't yet a captain. I was a soldier, and I was late. There was heavy traffic on the Belt Parkway. I got there late, and boy, did I get a tongue lashing. And I was, you know, they really gave it to me. And I'll tell you how they made the point that I can never be late again. There's no excuses. They told me leave the night before if you have to, but you're never late. The next day, I was told to meet at Monty's restaurant at 12 o'clock. I got there at 11:30. And I stood there. I waited outside, 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30. Finally, at about 4 o'clock, okay, my captain pulled up, and he looked at me, and he said, "You get the message now, Mike?" And it struck me. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Fine, I'll see you tomorrow." And he left. I mean, that's how serious it was. You're never late in that life. That's a sign of disrespect. And it could be something even more meaningful. If something was going down, you had to be there. You just don't come late. So that is something that was well kept.
I ain't gonna lie, that's cold. That's cold. That's gangster right there. Yeah, you was late yesterday. All right, I got you. Be here early tomorrow. You don't pull up till hours later. And you know he there, because he don't want to deal with the consequences. You pull up, ask him, you get what I'm telling you not? Yes, sir. I get up with you. This month, boy, I ain't gonna lie. I was just about to say I couldn't do that. Hell no, I don't listen. Yeah, maybe it's not good that I don't be in the Mafia or the cartel, because I don't listen. I don't listen at all. Like, I'm a very renegade, whatever other word you want to call that. Like, I don't listen. I would have broke not every single one of them, because I'm a loyal individual, but you gonna tell me that this come before my family? I'll smack the head honcho. Never mind.
Number 7, wives must be treated with respect. Well,
facts for sure. Yep.
I can say this: one of the shows that I hated the most was Mob Wives. Because it certainly didn't depict mob wives the way they should have been depicted. We did respect our wives in that regard, as far as in the house. I'm not going to say that, you know, guys didn't fool around and guys maybe didn't have a girlfriend. I'm not going to say that. So maybe that's hypocritical. You know, you can say what you want, but you know, in the house, in the family, wives were given the respect that they deserved. They were never really brought into that life, tried to keep them separate and apart. I guess there is some irony in that, some hypocrisy in that. I'll be the first to admit it. But anyway, that was a commandment of that life. Number 8, when asked for information, the answer must be the truth. When you are speaking to another mob guy, you're supposed to tell the truth, not supposed to lie. Now, do guys lie? They lie all the time, but you better be a good liar. You better back yourself up. You better not be caught, because if you are caught, serious consequences. You don't lie to the boss. Okay, you don't lie to your capo, and if you're a capo, you don't lie. Period. That's what you're supposed to be. Now, I will tell you right now, I lied to help people in that life, and there was times I may have lied to cover something up, maybe with one of my men. Is that a commandment that's really kept? No, but I think they're trying to tell you that honesty among one another was supposedly something that was important, and important enough to be written down as a commandment. Okay, that was number 8. Number 9, money cannot be appropriated if it belongs to others or to other families. And again, I'm reading this as it was translated from Italian into English. What they're saying is, you don't cheat anybody. If you're given money to give to somebody, you give it, and you make sure you give them the right count. You don't cheat anybody. Money is a big issue in that life. Money and power, big issues. You don't mess with either. And you don't infringe upon the territory of another family. You don't take from their territory unless you're given permission to do so. You clear it, you put it on record, and everybody.
I ain't gonna lie, just listening to him and how he talk and how his voice is, he do sound like a great candidate for a motherfucker to sit there and be like, forget about it. Like, I could definitely hear him saying that. Yeah, he was definitely in that life.
He knows about
For
it.
sure.
So you got to have honesty among each other. You got to have integrity among one another. At least that's the way it was written. And for the most part, in the old days, I believe that a lot of this was kept. Maybe many, many years ago. But I believe, that the original foundation of that life was built on honor and integrity, and obviously was corrupted after that. But that was the original intent of that life. That was number 9. Number 10, people who can't be part of Cosa Nostra. And that is anyone who has a close relative in the police. In other words, if you had a relative that might have been in part of law enforcement, might have been a judge, might have been in some kind of lawful authority, you weren't allowed to be made a member. Was that true here in the United States? No, it was not. I know guys who had relations in law enforcement. So, as long as you didn't talk to them and you didn't provide information here in Cosa Nostra, it was okay. Back in the day in Italy, way back when, it was not okay. It was actually the 10th commandment. Further in that, it was anyone with a two-timing relative in the family. I don't know exactly what that means, but I guess if you had a relative that was a snitch, or a relative that didn't have the right integrity, you weren't allowed to be a member. I guess that counted. They really looked into your family for security reasons. Maybe they thought it would wear off on you if you had a family member that was, two-timing, playing both sides to the middle, I would say.
Right on the black gangs.
And then lastly, anyone who behaves badly and doesn't hold to moral values. Again, I'm reading the translation of the 10th commandment. Hold to moral values, I don't know what they meant by that, quite honestly. I don't think they meant you had to go to church and be a good Catholic. I guess maybe morally within the family, they expected you to hold, values of integrity and morality. I don't know, but to me, that's quite ironic that would be the 10th commandment. But anyway, that's the 10 commandments of the Mafia as it was uncovered in Italy in 2007 in Palermo, Italy. Salvatore Piccolo, who was a Mafia guy, who was on the run for many years, that's where this was discovered. So that's kind of it, So look, people, again, did I violate omerta? Yes. I didn't violate omerta when I took a plea and went off to prison. I did my time. It wasn't a cooperation agreement that I had at that time. Obviously, I speak about it. I've been speaking publicly about that life for 24 years. So in that regard, I violated omerta. Not according to the strict interpretation of these 10 commandments, but I think we understand the essence of it, and you're not supposed to be talking about that life. Obviously, a lot of people did that here in the United States in '85 when the RICO law really started to become effective. A lot of people, turned informant and so on and so forth. So, it's been greatly compromised, I would say, in the past, 25, 30 years.
Oh, for sure. Everything has been completely compromised in the past 25, 30 years. Even the word compromise has been compromised. But boy, that Rico, ooh, they don't even use it for the mafia no more. They use it to take down street gangs. What the fuck? I mean, you could look at it in one or two ways. Like, dang, y'all really focusing that on this? That's crazy. Or you can look at it like street gangs don't really become that powerful, and they don't even know it. Organizations really become that powerful. They don't even know it. It's a shame, but it is what it is, I guess. That's gonna do it for this video though. Y'all like and subscribe so y'all don't miss another one. I've been told to do that. I'm not gonna keep doing that. But y'all eat fruit, get you some money, and stay out of the illegal life. Do something that's gonna get you rich legally and enjoy life. You ain't gotta look over your shoulder, hopefully. Catch y'all in the next one.